And I was a first lieutenant in the Army Nurse Corps, eventually to the 85th Evac Hospital. I was in Vietnam from 1965 to 1966. My total years in service was 4 years. Oh, memories of Vietnam are difficult sometimes to recall. I always say that I had some of the happiest times of my life and some of the saddest. I went to Vietnam by ship, and we had some very fun experiences on the ship. Although it was quite moving when we sailed under the Golden Gate Bridge. On our way, we didn't know where until we got in international waters and received our orders. But there were a lot of people on the Golden Gate Bridge that day protesting the war. And we arrived in Quy Nhon, South Vietnam. All these little sampans were around us everywhere, and you didn't know if they had bombs or grenades or anything. But we first started our hospital in a valley about 20 miles from Quy Nhon. And it was quite difficult. We didn't have any running water. We were just in tents. And it was a lot of hard times then. We also found out later that we were surrounded by Viet Cong, and they were taking pot shots at our evac helicopters as they landed. Our hospital was later in Quonset huts and a more firm foundation than just tents. We had casualties almost immediately, and it was very difficult to see our young men so shot up in such agony. One case I remember in particular was a warrant officer who had been up in a helicopter, and they landed in Quy Nhon, and he got out of the helicopter and a missile on the chopper misfired and almost decapitated him. And we spent hours reattaching his head, his nerves, his muscles, and all. Didn't know how much he would have left. But one morning I was making rounds, and I knelt down to read a letter to him from home that had finally caught up with him. And as I read, the tears were coming down his face. And we knew then that he was understanding what was going on. During the fall of Saigon, I was an instructor at St. Vincent's College of Nursing in Los Angeles. And I had just come back to my office after a day in the clinical area in Long Beach VA Hospital. And the news, there was a television there, and there was news of everybody hanging on to the helicopters and all trying to get out of Saigon. And I had been in Saigon before a few times, and it was such a beautiful city at one time, and it was tragic to see the embassy overrun and those sights of people trying so hard to get out. When I look back over the fall of Saigon, about 10 years after I got home, it was very hard to see because America had never lost a war and left in defeat, so to speak. And that was a whole new experience. And it made one wonder, why? Was this all in vain? And I had joined the Army because of what President Kennedy had said about asking not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And so there we were, and it was all coming to an end. And we have to think whether it was a good thing or not. I think later the books that came out and McNamara and the things that were said I was very idealistic in those years, and pretty stupid, I think, looking back. But I truly believed in our country and our mission, and I know as an individual, I'm proud of my service and that of the men and women I served with. We did a lot of good for our soldiers and a lot of good for the civilian population when we had an opportunity. I don't know if it's worth 55,000 lives.